Hey, beautiful people, how's it going? Welcome back to Doesn't Make the Put. Welcome to Doesn't Make the Cut podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Wright, and I'm from the Gitsan and Wet'suwet'en Nation.
And I'm Timko Hayeks at Gubba Hayeks. I'm Nick D'Angeli from the Niskat, Tsimshian, Tlingit, Haida, Gitsan, Tsit'awat, and Colville nations. If you're new here, welcome. We're an Indigenous film TV review podcast that you can only watch on YouTube, listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
I work in the film industry. My primary trade is assistant directing, but what I like to do is writing, producing, except for directing and camera. That shit freaks me out.
Some big things, man. Some big things. In the film industry, I'm an actor. I'm a film director and screenwriter, as well as I dabble in some modeling.
Yeah, and now that we're here, if you think we're worthy, please, and you enjoy what we have to say, come on, give us a like, comment, subscribe, share. You have no idea how much that helps the channel.
We'd like to acknowledge we're bringing this podcast to you on the traditional unceded Coast Salish territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations in Vancouver, BC, over in Canada. We thank our Coast Salish relatives for allowing us to live, work, and podcast in their traditional territory.
And today's episode, seeing that spooky season is right around the corner, it could be a hot take to some people. Some people may not. Some people might even enjoy it, but even still, I think it's something that we would like to give our 2 cents on Antlers. So, Nick, I got the impression that you have a lot to say about this.
Antlers. All right. So, this movie was released in 2021. It takes place over in Oregon. And the story is about the Wendigo. It is through a non-Indigenous perspective. There's one Indigenous famous actor in there, Graham Greene. Legend of the Fall. Just kidding. No, he's not in there. My first impressions on this, I remember seeing the trailer when it first came out, and I thought, oh, dang, this looks pretty interesting. And I remember at the time there was some mixed things on it, particularly with the story itself. Mm-hmm. And that just gained some curiosity. Was able to finally watch it on, what did I watch it on? On Disney Plus. I do enjoy the cinematography of it. Like the lighting in a lot of the scenes, I feel like were done really well. You have Jesse Plemons in there. He's a really good actor. Overall, it's when you take an Indigenous story, and especially from an Indigenous oral history and through a supernatural being, and you kind of put it through a non-Indigenous perspective, it's very interesting. Very interesting. So yeah, my first initial thoughts is just kind of like a mixed bag for me. I don't know, how do you feel about it, Mike?
Yeah, like when I first saw the trailer to this way the hell back in 2019 or 2020, whenever that first trailer did come out, I was actually genuinely excited. Where I'm like, ooh, sweet, creature feature, awesome. And then I heard it's about the Wendigo, like, oh, well, is the talent at least Indigenous? No, they're not. No, like I'm a lot like you. Like I'm a little conflicted on the presentation of this movie here. While yes, the cinematography is absolutely beautiful. Like, hey, they're showcasing BC in all its glory, and so that's the one thing I will not take away from it. The acting is mostly fine. There's a few parts that are a little shaky to me, but I'll save that for the spoiler I'll save that for the spoiler section then. And the directing, like, I know, like, Scott Cooper did Hostels, and this is where it's kind of like a gray area. Like, I'm not gonna fully comment on the director Scott Cooper's motives here. Like, I'm not sure if he's being exploitative toward Indigenous stories, or he just genuinely appreciates our stories. And sadly, I cannot comment on that, whether he's one side or the other, because this is his second, as far as I know, this is his second Indigenous take on his second Indigenous story that he made. It was produced by Guillermo del Toro too, and that one I'm not surprised because some of the designs does feel like Guillermo's style. So I feel complicated about this. Like, on the one hand, there's elements in here I do like. On the other hand, I feel like it should have, at the very least, it should have been an Indigenous cast.
No, I'm in full agreement there. Like, especially you take, you take a supernatural being like this, and I get it, like through a film perspective's eye, like that'd be something to make, and to create, mostly from its the tons of stories that you can take on through this. But the fact that it is an Indigenous supernatural being, having that, if you're wanting to create that type of movie, to have at least more Indigenous cast, maybe have them being an Indigenous lead, because we follow this white family, two different families, seeing what they are like. This little kid, his having to go through that. You see it from his perspective and then from a teacher's perspective. So it's all pretty interesting. Like the designs of Wendigo was pretty freaky. Like they did really well job on that. But at the bottom line, we see this in countless movies and TV shows where it's not there's different ways that you can have that representation. Like we look at something like with Prey, for an example, where it was a non-Indigenous director, but the whole cast was pretty much all Indigenous. So you were able to have like a little bit of a medium ground there. You take a story like this, where it kind of reminds me of, there was something that it reminded me of. I lost my train of thought on that one. I don't know. For me, it's, after really like sitting on it, there was some decent parts in there, but not enough to hold the movie down for me itself.
Representation really is important. Like a great example of this, where there was some outrage, is Memories of Geisha, where the female lead was actually Chinese and not Japanese, and there was a huge outrage there. So in this case, this is no exception either. Yeah, so it really is like a weird gray area here, because I could tell there was a lot of respect and care for the lore. I commend them for that. I'm thankful that they were like, oh, that's a stupid story, blah blah blah, what XYZ. It's complicated as an Indigenous man myself, so like I feel I genuinely, I can't emphasize enough that I feel two ways about this, because I know like Wind River had the same kind of outrage.
Right.
Well, not outrage. Wind River should have been an Indigenous cast. I won't deny that did spread the message across, because people from Europe were talking about Wind River, and they had no idea about the missing murdered Indigenous women. And when they heard about that, they were upset that this is actually a thing, and they see the injustice as well. So, and while here, like, it could be like a good catalyst to create more Indigenous stories, I just hope that the next stories would actually, at the very least, have more Indigenous talent in there.
No, absolutely, yeah. Like it, that's why we were talking, like, with it being a mixed, is like certain stories, it's good to get the word across, and then in hopes that the next time this is done, it's through a proper representation. Yeah, because okay, so if we take it as a horror movie on its own, like if we take away from the it being the supernatural being, indigenous supernatural being, and if it was just like that was out, I would say it makes a pretty decent horror movie. It had some really freaky moments. The as we were talking about too, like the design of the creature itself was really well done, and I felt like there was some good moments. Like there were times where it was kind of stretched out, and it was a little bit long in certain areas, but in the parts that it did deliver, I felt like it delivered on a horror aspect. So if we take it as that, cool. I don't know, man. In our rating system, I say it's a rough cut. It's a 4 out of 5 for a non-spoiler review.
No, I'm inclined to believe that it is a rough cut. You're right. If it's being judged as a horror movie through and through, it's fine. Like it kind of does the job. It's very atmospheric, and there's some very creepy atmospheres here, but it is ultimately flawed. There's some things that just does not work. We'll obviously talk about that in the spoilers section. Yeah, it's weird. Like, I like it, but at the same time, just like it rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if you want to, add this to your horror movie collection and just check it out and want to see with your own eyes on this, yeah, definitely see your thoughts and let us know. Let us know what your thoughts are. If you agree or disagree, can create a really good conversation with that. And if you have seen it already, like, what did you think about it? So yeah, definitely let us know down in the comment section there.
Absolutely. And I suppose we're going to spoiler section. So, your one warning: we are going to talk spoilers. Yeah. So when I was talking about some of the acting, the bullies, like I know like they have like such a small role, but the ginger bully, the redhead kid there, I don't know. There's just no emotion there. I didn't feel like he was this complete asshole. So like it felt like he was just a one take kid, and that was it.
I could see that. Yeah, a little. I don't know if yeah, the scene that definitely I was shocked is when the bully actually got oh man, he got wrecked.
Yeah.
I did not expect that, but it was like it was pretty interesting. Like yeah, with the acting, a lot of them like I felt like it was done well. Like the two main boys in there.
Oh yeah. Lucas and
Aiden, I think that's his name.
That's his name. Yeah. So yeah, I do want to talk about the main cast there. So Lucas, he did a very good job of playing a traumatized kid.
Mm-hmm.
He's really tense. He's really nervous around people, and you can see that behind those eyes there is he's seen some shit. For a child actor, that's pretty damn good. I'll give props where props are due. Yeah, like Jesse Plemons, he's always a class act. He always give it his all. Carrie Russell, for the most part, I did like her acting, but I think in her case, just some of the writing where I'm just like, you are one really involved teacher. Like to me, it's really strange that she's going to these crime scenes. She's doing some detective shit work, and I'm just like, and I'm watching this whole thing like, and which I understand, like like she suffered trauma of her own, and so she's projecting her traumas into Lucas, but even still, she's really involved for a teacher.
No, that's true. You're talking about the involvement of through that Graham Greene's role. Like even though it was small, like when he was on screen, like I mean, this is I don't know. I love Graham Greene's acting in general. When he's on screen, like you can't help but pay full attention to him. But you know what I was just thinking, man? With the story that this had, if you put an indigenous cast in there, that would have been done really well. Like in a because you think about Carrie Russell's character, she's a teacher she grew up, it wasn't fully, it was they didn't fully say it, but they showed sequences of things between her and her dad.
Yeah, which
And
the scene where he's like in the nude on her bed crying, like I saw that, like,
well,
well, no wonder you're fucked up. So
yeah, that was weird. Oh man. But her storyline itself, she grew up in this small town. She leaves. I guess she went to California. She gets her teacher's degree, and then she moves back. Lives with her brother, who is who's played by Jesse Plemons, who's a police officer. He's the sheriff. She's having to deal with that trauma because she's back into the house, that all the stuff that happened to her. It's also implied that it happened to her brother as well. I was just thinking about this. If they casted an Indigenous lead for that, you could have spoke on so many different levels,
yeah,
on so many things, whether to do with sexual abuse, talking about that induced trauma that can be involved even once you get into adulthood, and even through having, even if the kid was also Indigenous too, talking about with the family systems, the you hear things about the kid's dad, that they kind of live in like the poorer side of town. But that could have spoke on so many levels if it was an indigenous cast. And the fact that it was whitewashed through this, that's where it kind of like it's a very mixed bag. Because if you take a film itself, like everyone who was a part of this like did a really well job. The production design I felt like was really well done. The visuals, the cinematography, like it had those aspects in there. But just at the end of the day, you take an indigenous story, you try to put it from a white person's perspective, through somebody who isn't aware of it. Maybe they really enjoy it, but when you have that connection, like for both of us, I know like we're from the north, so like we don't really like, we have similar stories to the Wendigo, but we know the importance of that. You take a very supernatural being. I mean, I did the short film Bao the Cannibal Giant. That's like if and you worked on that one too, Mike. That's like if Bao was whitewashed into something like this.
yeah,
It's like a very like, I don't know. It's a very weird thing. Like it's nice to see the story being showcased, but it would have been even better if it was showcased in the right hands.
absolutely, I agree. Yeah, like it's, I generally do feel two ways about it. Like it's, on the one hand, like this could be like a catalyst. Well, to an extent, it kind of was a catalyst because Prey. Not that I'm saying the two are connected by any means, but Prey, there's this indigenous story fighting a fucking predator. That shit's awesome. That shit's great. And like you, I'm also equally frustrated that there is no indigenous. Oh, there is one indigenous talent in there, but he's there for like 10 minutes of the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And no, there is a lot of missed opportunity here, and it really did just miss the mark here, and no, it's a shame. It really is a shame.
It sure is, and in hopes that that eventually, if this story were to be told again, that it could be going into the right hands, because I would say this did have some really good potential. Like I even enjoyed at the beginning. There was it was spoken in the Ojibwe language.
Yeah.
So you have those aspects, but if it was like the full fledged of it, I think it could have been a really good horror film to have that in there, just with the representation aspect. And this is why you hear it countless times again that representation is so important, because it just creates the story aspect, and it also as well, for the people that are just watching this, and you see it through anything. Like if Like I've slowly in my life have become a really big fan of horror films, and I think especially too, what really gravitates me is when it's I really enjoy taking a lot of our oral histories and supernatural beings and putting them into the film. It creates like so many different aspects, but also like growing up, if you're, a horror film fanatic, like imagine having that, like having that strong representation because, in a big genre that's really well adored. So it's having that and then having those really strong stories to share with many others. And I would hope that one day this story is shared through an Indigenous take.
I hope so too. Like, pretty sure after Prey and studio execs are seeing just how successful Indigenous stories are, I have no doubt that there will be more stories like this, and I'm pretty sure that there will be more Indigenous talent in there. Like there's reservation dogs, so we're finally catching up in the media here.
Yeah, no, exactly, and it's only gonna flourish even more, and even if in that aspect, that's when a project like this comes out that you're like, all right, it's there a bit, we're getting there, let's do up the next one, even 10 times fold. So
Exactly.
is with
And
that.
there's a few things I do want to.
Mhm.
There's no transition here. It's gonna be kind of harsh from like this semi-heavy conversation to talking about the structure of the film.
Yes,
So to the listeners, sorry for the harsh transition, but we're gonna talk. There's a few things I do want to talk
structure.
about the structure of the film here. So some scenes felt like they were just cut off. Like it felt like it could have been easily like explored by a couple more minutes or 5 more minutes. There's a few conversations just that feel that they just had their say, and that was it. There's no conclusion. There's no resolution in any of the. And again, it comes back to the writing.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. I could see that. They're like, I mean, well, how long was this? This was hour
How
and
long was it?
30, hour
Really?
basically hour and 40, rounded out.
Oh, okay.
So it's a fairly short film, but I can definitely see that. Like it definitely could have explored a few more pieces on there. Yeah, yeah. I think the structure, because it almost feels like two different stories. Well, it basically is. It's two different stories that become into one story.
You're right, because which at the end of the day, those two stories do connect fairly well. Like Julia and Lucas, those two do share pain, and because of that, that's why Julia is so involved with Lucas, and yeah. So I do agree with that, and there's brain fart. What I was gonna say. Continue.
Yeah, no, with the overall structure, like there are a couple things like with we're seeing Lucas in the house, and his dad and his brother are locked up in the attic there. My first thoughts were like, damn, like how did he do that himself? Like how did he get there? And then you slowly see it later on that his dad, when he was like feeling that full sickness, like he made that himself, and to keep his kids protected.
Yeah,
Um,
which he's a devoted father, despite him being a meth head. Like, he's a good father.
yeah, no, exactly. And there are certain things like it does play, like there are flashback sequences. I mean, we've said it before in the past. Like when it comes to flashback sequences, there's got to be like a good transition through it. I felt they did an okay job. That yeah, there were a few times that maybe they could have explored it a little bit more in this scene, and then maybe because some scenes I don't feel like were quite necessary. But that just goes bottom line, like with the structure, and then the writing to an extent. But I also believe also in the editing process of of where you go with certain things. I will say I did enjoy the ending where you get that little teaser of Jesse Plemons' character feeling or becoming the like the next host of the Wendigo.
Yeah, like I know like when Graham Greene's character was talking about the lore of the Wendigo, and he's saying that the Wendigo spirit only goes after broken souls, and originally I thought that was gonna go to it's gonna come back to Lucas, because at the end of the day, like that's a broken soul right there. Like he lost everything. He lost his dad. He lost his son, both in gruesome ways. He was there. He was present,
Mm-hmm.
and I just thought it was kind of a missed opportunity right there because Jesse's character said himself that, look, we possibly have a caged tiger right here. This cub is going to grow some claws, and then we see him cough up that black shit, and yeah. So I thought that was a little strange. Like it it could be a contradiction. It could be just a personal preference. Either way, but I do like that. I do like that it shows that the Wendigo is basically immortal.
I almost thought that towards the ending, it's in the tail end of the climactic where Kerry Russell's character kills the dad. And then Lucas's little brother starts feeling that being inside him. I almost thought, I was like, imagine if the film ended on that, like pulled a freaking Quiet Place. I feel like that maybe could have been, I don't know, in my opinion, that could have been a little bit of a nice nice way to end things off, because you don't know if like they're gonna make it out or not.
Yeah, it's ambiguous. It's up to the viewer's interpretation.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was watching that scene. First, I'll address before I get to the part that really bothered me. Went off to go kill the little baby lamb. I was watching that, and it's very sad. But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel like, hey, it's a brutal scene because we're hearing not one, not two, but 3 fucking stabs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, lady, at least slice his throat or something. You don't need to stab him 3 times.
Oh man.
Like, or at least tell Lucas to fuck off. Lucas, you don't need to be here. Go back outside. Go inside the truck. She does the worst thing. She kills both her family people, both of her family members in the same room. I'm like, well, this kid's gonna need years and years of therapy.
And he ends up living with her.
And he lives there. Anyways, right. I like my creature features. That being said, the boss battle in this, the part where Julia fights the Wendigo, I have to say is like the most anticlimactic thing ever. Because we've seen the Wendigo being really fast and vicious and strong, and it was severely nerfed in this fight here, where he does this really slow, sluggish swipes, like, I swipe, and then Julia's dodging, like, I stab, and just like it was really clumsy to look at, and I'm not sure if it's because of budget restraints or time restraints or what have you. Either way, it was so anticlimactic. There's a lot of build up and no payoff.
Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement, man. I feel like it could have done with the camera work, because it was a pretty wide shot throughout that whole fight sequence. That brings into another thing with the creatures itself. Sometimes it's okay to show a little, but not a lot.
That's another thing too. Like, it showed too much, especially when Lucas's dad, rather. And we're seeing too much of him. Like, and I'm not sure if it's because the director really liked the makeup work or he wanted to flex the visual effects here. But you're right. I'm agreeing with that. They showed too much. Sometimes less is more.
Exactly. And especially if you're trying to go with it being scary, because, yeah, in the first the first bit that we see, the dad slowly, freaking he's straight out of Underworld. Like that, if you showed that just a brief snippets, like that's pretty scary, and you hear him just in the background. But we see we see too much of him in the beginning, and then towards the end of the creature, like it was a really amazing design. Like, you know, props to whether it was done. I think it was a mixture. It was there was some practical in there and visual effects. But props to who've done that, because it looked pretty good. I mean, it looked really good. It was like, dude, the camera wise, such a saw way too much, and it like created that flaw of like, to a point where if you see something long enough, especially in a scary movie, it doesn't really get scary after. Towards the end, maybe you could have done a little bit more if you went a little tighter. You know, you cut on certain things, you see certain things of the body. Like, it's okay, like if you see the creature for like 3 seconds, we saw the whole fight sequence of, you know, her basically like stabbing him in. Yeah, it did really fall pretty flat there.
No, it's always a fine balance between showing too much, showing too little, or showing nothing at all. A great example of this is Bird Box. Kind of a creature feature, kind of not. And I remember a lot of people were frustrated that they didn't see that there was nothing there. It's always a fine balance that is always hard to pull off on trying to show the monster, but at the same time not showing too much of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes it all around scary.
Pretty sure there's more to mention, but I think that's pretty much the majority I wanted to talk about. I'll give it the same rating. It is a rough cut. A lot of wasted potential here.
As a rough cut, probably a rare one that we've so far. It's been a while since having a rating like this. So yeah, this is equivalent to a 4 out of 5. Let us know your thoughts down below. How you feel about this movie. Yeah, what are your full thoughts on it? If you have seen it, and if you have not seen it, hopefully this will edge up your curiosity, especially since we're going into spooky season there.
Give us a like, comment, subscribe, then we'll catch you in the next one.